Well, are you able to see my?
Yes.
Yes.
You
Yes.
can. Good. Okay. I got two bets. One is that consciousness and technology will increasingly merge to the point that it's hard to distinguish which is which. And the other is a self-actualizing economy where you increasingly are able to make a living out of your own evolution, connecting to networks and people and markets worldwide rather than a particular job in a
All right,
particular
Jerome,
location.
is it possible that you share the full screen presentation? Because
Oh, that's what oh, okay. Let me see here.
yeah,
Ta-dum.
so that
Ta-dum.
our
Is
viewers,
that
Uh-huh.
is that where
yeah,
I know
Yes.
great.
working?
Yeah.
Thank you. Participatory democracy. Hey.
Thank you.
Okay. So on one hand, humans are becoming cyborgs, and that's a trend that's just I've been measuring it for a bunch of years. I gave up. It's obvious. That's where we're going. We're micro miniaturizing things, putting it on our body, in our body, on our clothing. Online, the guy up there with his the head piece, looking at the orange, he actually can get the vibration so he can get the colors in his head because he can't see colors. But the physical environment gets increasingly built, becoming more intelligent, and voice recognition, voice synthesis, and these two of these things will eventually merge into a conscious technology civilization. You can look at this one later on. I suspect that these will be available, right? Every age has had some sort of product, power, wealth, place, war, time. As we move from the information age to the conscious technology age, the product will be linking all kinds of stuff, from smart socks that tell your airlines that you can't get on the plane because your blood pressure isn't right and you got to take an aspirin. And power moves increasingly to an individual. Or religion was the original organizer of people. Nation state, new power on top of it. Corporate power on top of that. For example, saying that Trump can't be on Facebook is a new kind of a power beyond that. And individuals have power beyond that. Wealth becomes being. If you're boring, you're sort of uninteresting, you're no longer connected. Place is in motion. Where are you? You're like all over the joint. War, unfortunately, if we have it, is over identity, but let's not get into that. Hopefully you prevent that little nonsense. And time becomes an invention. You'll be in so many different time zones and so many different time periods, and also different motions and speeds of motions, that time is not a regular thing anymore. Right now it's flexible, flexi work, flexi time, but eventually it's just an invention, I think. Okay, so on the self-actualizing economy, as we put all of our AI, narrow AI, not general yet, but narrow AI, into the entire physical infrastructure of society, it'll be like we're creating an autonomic nervous system. And we don't worry about our heartbeat, our liver, digestion, but we still worry about sewer systems in cities, but eventually we won't in the same sense. So by analogy, we'll create an autonomic nervous system for all kinds of next technologies coming up. So I like the phrase eco-smart. Some people say eco-cities, some people say smart cities. Eco-smart. We want both of them in there. And then that then frees up the human mind, because the city, the environment becomes like the autonomic nervous system, is running essentially on autopilot. Not totally independent of humans. I mean, that might be a mistake. But in any case, it's not going to be happening that fast. Technological unemployment. People keep saying, with all this new technology, there'll be new age, new conscious technology, all that sort of stuff. And this idea of unemployment is just a philosophical fiction of futurists. Well, here's what's different this time. One, artificial narrow intelligence will make predictable unemployment like truck drivers. That's true. You can plan ahead for that, but the general intelligence cuts across the whole board. That's not as easy to predict. AGI may arrive between 2030, 2050, which means we may hit some serious massive unemployments between that period if it occurs. Now, it may never occur. It's artificial general intelligence is pretty fancy stuff. But so what I'd like us to say to the naysayers is, what's different this time? And here are 7 answers to that question. The acceleration of technological change is a lot different now than it was 25 years ago, and will be more in 25 years. So the last 25 years will look slow. Compare the next 25 years. Secondly, globalization, interaction, and synergies among these entities. We didn't have that before. 3, existence of a global platform for transferring it. We didn't have, in the information age started We didn't have the internet. I had to get into a jet plane to convince some people in other countries to put in packet switching for this future thing called internet coming up. But now we can, with a keystroke, we can share stuff immediately, simultaneously, and without errors. I mean, if I get in a jet plane and I explain something, I might make a mistake, or I might, but with the transfer of stuff across a global platform, fewer errors, much faster. Standardization of databases and protocols increases science incredibly faster. Look at how fast we've done with the COVID vaccinations. Fewer plateaus and time to adjust. The laptop I am talking to you on right now looks a little similar to the one I had in 1992. Granted, it's much more power, but I got used to the idea of folding it over and walking away with my computer. I've had 30 years to get used to that. We've had a whole generation of the world to get used to that. But when AI goes into general AI and the changes keep going fast, you don't have a chance to adjust because it's the next new thing. It's like when upgrading software and you hear somebody say, oh, I don't want to upgrade. Sorry, you got to. And we get annoyed at this constant learning all the time. I don't know how you get around that problem. That's a serious one. 6, billions of empowered people in relatively democratic free markets able to initiate activities. That means you don't have a pyramid of making change waiting for the king to do it. You have all these empowered people making change. So you're disseminated change agents all throughout society. 7, machines can learn how to do what you do and then do it better than you. Those are 7 reasons. So when someone says there's nothing new under the sun, there'll be more jobs. There may be more new kinds of work if you move into the self-actualizing economy. If you don't move into the self-actualizing economy, we have a problem. So in this scenario, we wrote 3 scenarios on this. In this particular scenario, humans were free. Governments did anticipate the impacts of artificial general intelligence. Right now, they don't. They didn't even make the distinction between narrow and general. Most of the reports, I've read 30 of these reports, they don't make the distinction. And none of them, by the way, mention the word synthetic biology. It's not just AI. It's a problem. There's a whole lot of other stuff that's going to make these impacts. They also conduct, in this scenario, extensive research on universal basic income. That's the thing that gives you the freedom. That gives you the base. Not much money, but just enough so that you're not thrown in the streets. Increasing intelligence becomes a goal. We know the plasticity of the brain. We're learning a lot about that sort of stuff. But I don't know a single country in the world in their Ministry of Education statement that says increasing intelligence is an objective of education. Increasing knowledge, socialization, all of that. But in physical education, we know about bodybuilding. We're just not teaching people brain building. Self-unemployment is promoted. In the past, if you were self-employed, it was because you couldn't get a job and you were embarrassed. Now we may make that a norm, a desirable thing. You creating a living yourself out of your own creativity and heading people around the world, that's very cool. But a key point on this is because people have in the past seen upon the job description that their job boss gives them and their value, we have to change culture. Because if it's an insecure move to go from I am an economist working at the University X to I am myself creating my own world. That's a big jump for people. So in this one key variable here is that artists and media moguls and entertainers help foster the culture of change from an employment culture to a self-actualization economy. That is a gigantic shift of mind orientation. And it's going to, and you want to change culture, you need the arts. So it's radio, it's television, and it's all of this sort of things. There's new memes that put in advertising. It's got to be done. And if it doesn't, then a whole lot of people will be depressed. Because look, I mean, in my country, a lot of the American Indians are depressed because they never did the shift to a large degree of self-identity, of value. We know this is important. Okay, last comment here is that COVID, we wrote some scenarios for the Red Cross on the future of this stuff. And one of the key insights in there was the whole world, for the first time in history, is having a global timeout. Now, for the older folks here that have children, we know that when the children act up, you say, it's time out, sit down, Think what you did wrong. God damn, stop. Well, the whole world's doing this. I don't care whether you're in South Africa or you're in London or you're in Moscow, Washington. The whole world has had time like this show to rethink the whole game. And we know that after World War II, we got the UN and multinational corporations. What are we going to get after this one? I suspect we're going to have new forms of collaboration we have not seen in the past. And of course, as a futurist, I'm prejudiced. So I think that more and more people will take futurist warnings this time around than they have, differently than they have in the past. So thank you.
Just one last maybe question here is, what is your personal strategy to amplify this? Because you obviously kind of highlight the preference for that.
Good. All right, I forgot that. On the first one, I wrote in the book called Future Mind 30 years ago about this sort of stuff, and I said in there that, look, this could really go badly. I mean, brain hacking, there's a lot of bad scenarios we're all pretty familiar with. So what's going to make it turn out good rather than bad? What I think, this is not empirical stuff, but I think if we can get the mystic in our society, and I don't mean occult, and I don't mean religion, I mean mystic in the sense of the mystery of the divine universe and all that sort of stuff. That there's a consciousness that's common among all mystics. I don't care where you are in the world. There's a very similar consciousness about consciousness sharing, consciousness improvement. Consciousness is the focus of strategy. And the other side of the prejudice house are the tool makers, the technocrats. They figure baloney is consciousness stuff, man. If I make the tool, it'll solve the problem. I pass the law, it'll solve the problem. It's the technique that matters. And what I think will make this civilization good is if we can get a merger in ourselves as well as in society, because we're all part mystic and part technocrat. But imagine if we have a synergy and a harmony between these two points of view. And the example I like to give is the great piano performers. When they are interviewed, they'll often talk about, well, the music, the composer, my hands, the piano, all came into a whole integrated act. Well, that's conscious technology. You couldn't separate the two out to have the performance. So imagine civilization having a performance that is, in a sense, encouraged by mystic and technocrat starting to get together, which, by the way, may have a nice side effect of reducing prejudice in general, because the biggest prejudice I could find was between the tool maker and the consciousness sharer throughout all time. So if we can get rid of that prejudice, prejudging the future prejudice, we might affect some other prejudices. The original assignment was 50 years. That's why I talked further out in the future than what we should do, than the current discussion of the present tense. Because I've done a little bit on that over the last 50 years, including emotional and education at the University of Massachusetts in 1971. But I want to jump in because you've talked about the geopolitical problems, the large-scale future problems with China and the United States. I have been pushing and is slowly having some headway on the idea of creating an Apollo-like goal for climate change and global warming as a joint goal for the United States and China together, and to create an Apollo-like program that other nations and entities can join. There have been two agreements between Beijing and Washington so far. The first one basically said, we don't want to do what we're already doing, which was nothing, but it led to the second agreement, which had some sharing back and forth. Trump, of course, wasn't into that sort of conversation, but Biden is, and Kerry understands this. So one of the, aside from the China and the United States being the two largest polluters and the largest economies able to do large-scale global system changes, it also has a moral responsibility because they're the largest two polluters in the game as well. So I think that may occur. One of the things that I think is really nice about this is that we used to do the environmental security reports for 10 years for all the militaries around the world. And we looked at this question, what works between China and the United States for collaboration? Because China has collaborated and asked for this several times at the high level, very publicly, and the U.S. did not respond well. and where the real collaboration can be is in, because China, as you know, aside from the global warming, as you know, almost all the rivers are polluted. They've got brownouts killing their growth. Half the economy is in extreme poverty. It's just, you know, the north is in extreme poverty, the south is doing better. So the rich-poor gap is causing protests across China as we speak, hundreds of thousands. They've got the problem of a civil war coming up in the northwest about the oil and the rest of it. And there's a whole slew of stuff that China knows and can clump underneath environmental security rubric. And the United States can accept environmental security as well. So then global warming becomes that focus, but then do like an impossible goal, 10-year type of thing like we did to land on the moon, to marshal the resources and so forth. I think that this is one of the most important foreign policy initiatives for making peace in the world there is. Because if you can't get China, because if you can get China and the United States to start to collaborate for real, which I think is possible in this focus, then you give hope to other people that it's possible.